okay? $500 million before we get this water plant up and running and producing electricity. And again, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks, it only costs us $25 million in Olivehurst. We've waited for over 60 years. We'll be still waiting, and I don't know when. You know, the money that we got from the grants, someone up in Public Works decided, well, that's going to be done in a certain area. My house is not in that area. So anyway, like I said, if it was a private company, someone would have lost their job. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. I just make a couple of points there, Tom. We don't actually know the cost yet, or how long we're going to be down, but we are complying with all the federal regulations that tell us how to go about investigating this and getting us to a point where we can start on the repair. So I just wanted to make those points. Any other public comment? Online? No, Vanjie? Okay, we're ready for the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on that?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
See no comments. We need a roll call vote. Vanjie?
Yes, we do. Director Bishop?
Yes.
Director Bradford?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Fuhrer?
Yes.
Director Messick?
Yes.
Director House?
Yes.
And Director Matthews?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we'll move on to discussion. Item 4 is receive presentation on the research project between the Center of Information Technology Research in the interest of society at UC Berkeley and the Yuba Water Agency on the use of monitoring and sensing technologies in levees. Sammy.
Good morning, Director Bishop, members of the board. Sammy Nall, Flood Risk Manager for Yuba Water. So this item really is a follow-up from February 20th, 2024 item where this board approved a grant to the UC Citrus group to do some research on the health of levees. We have among the most modern levees in the southern part of the county. But how do we maintain those levees? How do we know when there are potential issues? How do we know if the levees are going to continue to provide the level of flood protection we hope, or flood risk reduction for citizens in the southern part of the county? So that's really what this research project was really looking at, utilizing some of the most latest technology, sensors, to really monitor the levees, determine where maintenance might be needed, and try to predict potential weakness points way ahead so we can get those addressed before the storms come. So I'm going to introduce Professor Dimitrios Zekos and his students from UC Berkeley to give this presentation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today, Director, the board. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dimitrios Zekos. I'm a professor at UC Berkeley. I have here two students with me, John Sadek and Miller Tang, who are students at UC Berkeley and work on this project. As Ms. Saminol discussed, our goal was to try to demonstrate some of the new technologies that are readily available now that can be used to help with proper monitoring of the levees that, as you know, extend for many, many kilometers, and a failure at any point could be very, very damaging to infrastructure. So we deployed a number of technologies, and we'll show you some of those. Key to these technologies is a multi-scale approach where you have satellites, but in this case, focused more on drones or UAVs, scanning large areas, finding the most critical spots, and then putting wireless sensors and cameras in these specific areas with the intent to increase the resiliency of infrastructure, of the levees, and really make sure that no disasters are averted. We worked in 3 areas: RD 784, Bear River, and Dry Creek side, and the Dry Creek. In the next presentation, we did a lot of work on these 3 sites, but instead of just describing what we did, we will present things in terms of 5 main highlights. So with 5 takeaway points that we want to emphasize. I have listed here some of the work we did. In total, we're a small group of representatives from UC Berkeley. In total, we had about 11 researchers that got involved in this project, everybody with their expertise contributing to this. These are some of the technologies. There is more text than I will go through here. This is for your own notes, but it involved UAVs, and then mounting on the UAVs different types of sensors. Everybody knows that we can put cameras on the drones, but you can also put thermal cameras, you can put multispectral cameras, you can put a LiDAR sensor, and you're gonna see applications of those. Some geophysics, as well as wireless sensors that have been deployed on specific places. With that, I will start with the first highlight, and I will ask Miriam to present that part of the work.
So in the first highlight, the first highlight is focused on anomaly detection using UAV multispectral sensing at RD-784 sites. So in this case, the anomaly refers to burrows. But as you can imagine, there are different kinds of anomalies that we can detect, but I'm using burrows detection as a case study here. So this kind of burrows are referring to the animal burrows that we can find on top of the levees, and then they can damage the levees, as you can imagine. So the problem here is detecting animal burrows is important for the resiliency and the health assessments of levees. But as you can imagine, in the past, if we send personnel to walk through the levees and find this location one by one, it's a time-consuming process. It's not an easy task. So for demonstration purpose, we select one part of the RD-784, one segment of the RD-784 levees, as you can see here. So we did 2 things. So we send a part of our crew members during one of the surveys to kind of manually survey this area to basically find out these locations, burrow locations. And every time we find one locations, we basically take photos. And all these photos are geo-referenced so that when we import into a map software, for example, Google Map or any GIS software, we can see the precise locations. But at the same time, we deploy our UAV with sensors. So as Professor mentioned before, we have LiDAR, which gives us the 3D geometry and also topography of the area, as you can see on the top right. And then we can create cross sections such that we can get like centimeter level topography of the mapped regions so that we can see those subtle topographic changes over space and over time. And also, we also deployed our thermal camera and multispectral camera, where the thermal camera can give us the temperature measurements, surface temperature measurements, where the multispectral camera can give us information that beyond human visible lights. So we can see the red edge and near infrared, which is beyond our visible light spectrum. So as you can see here on the right, those are the photos that we took about the burrows. And all these informations, as I mentioned, they are geo-referenced to the same coordinate system. So when we put everything together, they are stacked to, basically they are aligned to each other. So that we can develop a map, basically use this remote sensing data to find those burrow locations. For us to do that, we basically developed our own AI models so that we take in all this remote sensing data and then predict those burrow locations. So as you can see at the bottom, those in the middle, those are manual labels that I create manually, spend me hours and hours, where the predicted mask, those are predicted results by the AI model that we train. So as you can see here on the left and on the right, we can see that our models are able to pick up those clusters of burrows quite precisely. And so instead of walking through the entire levee on the crest, on the slope, on the toe to find this burrow manually, now we are able to fly our UAV combined with all this sensing technology run through the and then use our algorithms to automatically delineate these burrows, and in a very efficient manner. So now I will pass to my colleague John to talk about subsurface modeling.
So the UAV data is really useful in finding surface information as well as very shallow information. But ultimately, the long-term health of the levee depends on deep subsurface conditions. And we need to find out how can we first find the information about the subsurface conditions, as well as how do we also model that and create a 3D model. And so previously, the way we would find these subsurface conditions is by drilling or sending some consultant to go out and drill boreholes. And that's what has been previously done. And looking at a specific reach of the levee, we went in and found a PDF version of previous boreholes that have been dug. And we manually had to go in and digitize this data. And so as a quick recommendation for the future, we recommend that future information with boreholes or any other sort of easily digitizable data to keep it in some sort in digital format rather than a PDF format. It just saves the process because you do lose some information when you convert between the two. So this is really useful in finding point measurements, but it doesn't really tell us what happens in between these point measurements. And finding a subsurface condition along the profile of the levee is a challenge given point measurements. And so what we end up using is a non-invasive electromagnetic mapping. And so we have a little video here. This is one of our researchers actually using this non-invasive electromagnetic mapping. It's with a ski, and you just walk across the levee, and it gives you some information about what's going on deeper. We can combine this with the UAV data that Ming was previously talking about, and this helps us create a 3D model using the information from the two. You utilize a machine learning algorithm to kind of give us that information, combine the two together, and with this, we can now create a 3D profile along the entire levee, and giving us better idea of not only what's going on at the surface, but also deeper down, which is critical for the long-term health of the levee. I'll pass it back to Professor Zeppes to talk about how we monitor these.
So this is important because we have now the surface conditions and the subsurface conditions, but we also put in the ground sensors. And the way it's been done right now, most commonly in engineering practice, is some sensor data is installed, a sensor is installed, and data is collected on the sensor, and then somebody goes every 6 months, picks up the data, and then analyzes the data. So what we did is take some of those sensors that were already on RD784, a pressure transducer sensor, and make it basically fully autonomous. We put a solar panel, and we put also a node, and we transmitted the data so we can have a real-time monitoring of the pressure transducer data. So this is just the technology we're using for this. It's a piezometer node. It's just a panel. And at the end also, we also use a camera that I will show you next. This is the type of data that is coming in real time now. So somebody, anytime, who has access, of course, to this data, could see exactly what the groundwater levels are below the levee without really having to wait. And so that is important for quick decision making, especially when a storm is coming or there is a particular concern. The second thing we did in the same context is to install a camera just so for condition assessment. This is on RD784, and we didn't want to penetrate. We didn't have permissions to penetrate on the ground, so we just put it on top of the levee and just use this camera to have an understanding of what the conditions are. And so here's an example of the footage. You're going to see another camera in a more interesting place, but this is at RD784, where the camera is taking about a few pictures per day. We have it set up to take 4 pictures per day. And this is a whole year of data in terms of the conditions at that location. From the camera, you can automatically extract water level, if you can see the water, or anything else that is happening in that levee, including you can see here the vegetation which is a very an opportunity, if this is a critical place, to really understand really what the conditions are. And you could join online somewhere in a place where that information is and see that from your home. And the next highlight is from Mingliang, which will show how we combine these camera technologies with the UAVs together to really have a better assessment of criticality of conditions at Dry Creek.
So as I mentioned before, UAV data, we can go there and then collect the data, but that is very specific for that specific day and specific time. And Professor Zickles just mentioned, we are able to install some embedded sensors like cameras, like the piezometer nodes to get continuous data. But so now we are talking about how we can basically integrate together and how to find out those critical locations to install them. Because the UAV can give us a broad range, and then by analyzing the UAV data so that we can find those so-called critical zones to help us basically install these continuous monitoring technologies. So here is a demonstration site that we select at the Dry Creek Levee. So as I mentioned before, we are using this LiDAR multispectral camera, thermal camera, so that we can get point clouds, we can create coarse sections, we are able to get those orthomosaics, basically a plan view of the whole area, and also digital elevation models. So that's all these data can help us serve as a reference of one specific time. And we also can have a baseline that's date back to some time before. And in this case, we don't limit ourselves to use our own data. We can also leverage all this public database like provided by NASA, provided by USGS, where I'm showing here, this is one of the data set provided by USGS in 2019. We use it as a baseline, and then we compare with our UAV data that we collect in 2024 so that we can do a differencing. By conducting a differencing, we can find out those regions that basically appear some excessive or basically noticeable material changes or material gain or material loss, so that we define those areas as our critical zones. So by defining this critical zone, we can go there and then as I labeled in a red circle here. So that in this case, we can then install our camera nodes to continuously monitor these regions in a continuous manner so that we can get basically a better understanding of the area. And as Professor mentioned, we have solar panel attached to it, so it's self-power, so it's running 24/7 throughout the year. So, and I'm showing some like footage here that's showing the water level goes up and down at the segments of the Dry Creek Levee. So what I'm showing here on the left is before the wet season in fall 2025, where I'm showing in the middle, it's during the wet season in, I believe it's February 2026. As you can see, the water level almost approached to the crest of the levee. And on the right, it's in March 2026. That's after the wet season, so that we can, by comparing these images, we can find out regions that appear obvious material changes. And as I mentioned before, we have LiDAR, we have terrestrial LiDAR, we have UAV LiDAR. We can compare them and then quantify the material changes, basically the volume and also the elevation changes. In this case, we are not just talking about qualitative changes, we are talking about quantitatively measure how much material changed. So now I want to move, transfer back to Professor Zickles to talk about digital twin.
On the previous point, I will just point out that we can measure inch level and sub-inch measurements from this type of images with the survey. So we can see small particles moving away, so we can detect exactly where the erosion is taking place. The last highlight for today is really, as you can see, there is a lot of data that's being generated. Sometimes this can be overwhelming. And at the same time, the levees extend for many kilometers, and throughout the many kilometers, there are lots of different construction sequences, history of the levee. There is historical data, different types of investigations. And so it's very, very common for owners of infrastructure like this to get overwhelmed. At the same time, all the monitoring data that we show you, the satellite data, the UAV data, the geophysical data is just too much. So we want to bring up the concept of digital twins as a concept for managing all this amount of information and primarily for decision making, to make decisions long-term as well as during disasters. And so these digital twins can help you with data management of information. What the digital twin is as a concept, if there's one thing you want to remember, is it's a digital replica of the physical world. It's a 3D model that's evolving exactly as the physical world is evolving. And on it, on this digital replica, we're able to store all the historical information from the past, the present, also if we have cameras and pressure transducers. And also, because it is now digital and not in the real world, we can run simulations about the future. What will happen if there's a big storm, if it rains that much? And we can do that all in the digital world, so we can actually bring it back to the physical and say, here's what we need to do to prepare. And so that's digital twins, which is a concept that is really, once you have that analytics, you can have your regulatory compliance there, your risk assessment there, your simulations there, as well as all the machine learning and AI that we showed you. So we developed a prototype of that, of the digital twin, which if we have time, I can show you for another 3 or 4 minutes, instead of just showing PowerPoint slides. And you can actually see that also online if you want. We have this URL, and I can do that. Maybe I'll go there now. And so if you go to this URL, you'll be able to access that platform. We got permission from RD784 to have that platform there, so you can just enter. Anyone will do it. And the idea of this platform is you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to have sophisticated degrees or anything. It's supposed to be very user-friendly so that you can actually understand the conditions as long as you understand what the asset is about. So for example, if I zoom into RD784, all the data that you see in slides now that we showed you before are available here. You can, with your mouse, just zoom in and see the drone data, exactly when it was measured, and move around and look at the site yourself. And if we have repeated deployments, we can actually see it. So this is, for example, the data from January 2025. I can turn that off and activate the data from October 2025, where it's a drier levy. So you can imagine if you have the various deployments, you can overlay all of those. In fact, you can make one opaque and see one survey behind the other, if this is what you want. If you have photos from condition assessment, like we did, you can actually have those overlaid here, and you can see the photos, and you can click on each of them and say, here's the conditions at the time that I took the photos. So it's all there. This is from one of our field deployments, and you can see exactly what you were looking at. We mentioned a lot the subsurface data. I'll show you more of those later. But the subsurface data, all the boreholes that we digitized, we put them in this platform, and you can see these are the blue dots here. And when you click on them, click carefully, you can actually see the subsurface conditions exactly as it was in the consulting report, and now it's available to everyone, and you can see the various layers, which are really important. There is a lot more functionality. I'm going to just show you a couple of more highlights. You can actually spend a lot of time on this. You can actually see the data in 3D also. And so again, this is a digital replica, so we can rotate the whole thing. I'm showing you the black and white just to make it simpler, but you can see the levee here in 3D. You can actually see our track, because this is our track when we were deploying. So it was mapped, and you can have access to that information. And if you're interested and you're curious to measure, you can actually use these tools here to measure anything you want. So for example, you can measure distances, elevations. And what I will do very, very quickly, just for fun, I will just click one of the buttons. And we have, by the way, a user manual if you want to read this, but you can just click here and there. And you can immediately see for that levy, without having any other expertise, if this works well. Oh, sorry. It was just a bit slow. Maybe here, there. Yeah, it's gonna zoom in. So here you can see, for example, the cross-section of that I just cut. So here is the trees, and you can see the trees. Here is the levee, and here the farm around it. And anybody can do this. And if you're interested, you can also even look at the subsurface conditions, because the geophysical data that John talked about it is also visualized here. And color, the colors mean dryness of the material. And so we can see that. The last thing I will show you on this platform before I complete this presentation, there is a lot more. I mentioned the live sensors. So the live sensors, if you click on live here, you can actually see both of the cameras we have installed. So here is the camera on RD784, and you can click and see it. And so this is Tuesday, today, at 9 o'clock. That camera, by the way, can see at night. It's a specialty camera, and can see also, you can see fully at night. And this is the Dry Creek one, the conditions right now, as of this morning, 5 o'clock. And you can go, there's a whole details here. You can go back to all the photos that these cameras have taken. The same thing with the sensors. Again, I talked about pressure transducers. I'm not going to bother with the details, but if you want to look at all the data historical, it's all available here. At the end, this platform has the capability to integrate really technical data, but also make it available to anyone who wants to see it and have a real-time condition assessment of the condition. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll conclude this presentation with just some basic fundamental notes that I hope are useful. We have showed how new technologies that are relatively available, these technologies are not particularly expensive, can be used nowadays. UAVs have become cheaper, the sensors have become cheaper, and AI is becoming readily available, which can be leveraged to really improve the condition assessment of the levees. We showed you examples, some highlights of subsurface characterization, of surface characterization for the animal burrows, as well as some examples of real-time monitoring that can be used for decision-making. At the end, all the data can be integrated in a live digital twin, where all the information can be readily available, can be visualized, and can support decision-making, even from people who are not engineers, let's say, that really need to make this decision. In conclusion, I want to thank Yuba-Water for the support provided for this funding. In addition to the work that hopefully is useful to you, because that was our goal, it has educated a number of students in this type of issues who have been involved in this project, and we thank you very much for the funding that you have provided. Thank you very much. Yep.
Through the chair, not so much a question, maybe a question for staff, but just generally a comment. This is fascinating and incredible, and I really appreciate this presentation. This is far more than I think I understood that we were doing, and so it's great to see that data that's being compiled and that active monitoring, with the assumption that this is valuable, and I assume it is. I know we probably haven't got to really test it during high water yet. But I hope that as we're able, we'll continue to expand this network and this research. So that's really the part that I guess is for staff.
And through the chair, anything that gives us a little bit more confidence or understanding of our levee system is super important in this region. A lot of these guys think about water all the time, and on the irrigation side and the power and water delivery, that kind of stuff. But I grew up out there in Arboga, so I definitely know that anything we can do to understand the levees and kind of maybe get into a point where we can do some predictive repairs and be ahead of the game would be a lot better than having another levee failure. So thank you for continuing the work. Don't know how much it costs. I don't remember what the cost of this project was, but the information's invaluable. So thank you.
Absolutely. And you're right. That's why we selected RD 784 as a very excellent levee that has its challenges of being maintained versus the Dry Creek that really is not, has different problems. That's why we selected those two sites from various that we looked at. Overall, I think the idea of a lot of what I've shown you is about monitoring and going into the past. And the digital twin frameworks allows you to also predict into the future. So all the sensor data is telling you what's happening up to today. And there is more sensing that can be done, of course. But the future is to be able to run in this type of environment simulations about scenarios that, what will happen throughout our entire multi-kilometer levee if we have a big storm or if we have this type of high waters, and really predict in the virtual world what's going to happen so that you can actually do exactly what we discussed before, mitigation. How do we make sure that this simulation doesn't become a reality? I think that's part of the future of the digital twins. And definitely we focused over a smaller stretch because of obviously we have budget limitations. We thought it would be better to do it over a stretch of a couple of miles, I think 1.5 miles for each of the in Dry Creek and in RD 784. We didn't try to scale up over a bigger area so that we know exactly what we're doing over that stretch. But from an operations and from a perspective, this could be applied over a much bigger area. The idea is that these techniques are scalable over hundreds of kilometers.
Yeah, I think Director Bradford's question was somewhat answered there, but I'd like to dig in a little further to talk about the future of this effort. I think that was the crux of your question. I also have some other questions. I'd like to bring Patrick up as well and just talk about the value to the levee owner or operator and see what Patrick's actual use would be. And Sammy, I want to maybe even bring you up and talk about your thoughts on future investment here. But first, I want to ask the professor. Sorry, I'm bringing everybody up here. So it looks like you have, you said that you concentrated on a section of the RD 784 levee and a section of the Dry Creek levee to prove what you can do. And you had 5 highlights there of what you can do with these types of monitoring these efforts. Are you and your students available for future work? That's my first question. And it sounds like you have a vision for making this bigger.
Yeah.
You're available and willing.
We're definitely available.
Excellent.
We're also available to train others to help them if this is a framework that part of our mission is not just to come and do it once, but to make sure everybody else adopts this technique. So we're definitely available.
Excellent. Thank you. Patrick, if you just want to give a general characterization of like what you see the usability of this information is for your levee system.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and introduce yourself too.
Yes, Patrick Marr, General Manager for Reclamation District 784. And so RD 784 was asked to collaborate project a couple years ago, and Professor Zekos has done a phenomenal job installing these technologies out there. And we look at this as an additional tool. He mentioned that looking for the rodent burrows is very time consuming, and it is. And I just wanted to reassure everybody in the room that we're not going to stop walking the levees just because we have technology now. We're going to look at it as another leg to help us accomplish the ultimate goal, which is to ensure that these levees stay safe and secure and structurally sound. You see some of those rodent activity burrows in these slides. Maybe think to yourself, well, what are we doing about that? We have primarily a grout injecting program where we're injecting Portland cement bentonite slurry, similar to the consistency of what you put in a cutoff wall, a slurry wall in a levee. So the ultimate goal is to repair those holes, not cover them up to make them look nice like you've seen surface photos. So again, we look at this as a tool to enhance what already is a very robust maintenance program. As far as the sensors out there, amazingly, they haven't been vandalized yet. They haven't been kicked over. I mean, it's delicate equipment out there. Our staff is fully aware of the placement of these devices and respect them and request that contractors, service providers, ensure that they respect these devices and try to keep in shape.
Excellent, Patrick. Thank you.
And through the chair, just one question for Patrick. Is there a place where you share these best practices, like for road and borough repairs, things like that, so where the other districts that don't have the manpower or funding, they can kind of follow suit or get some ideas?
We have it all documented for rodent control specifically. A binder in our office that documents exactly what levy unit, what levy mile, what we did. Did we inject route? Maybe if it's just one or two gas X, smoke cartridge. It's very specific on what we do. So yes, we do have everything documented and how that's done.
But do we share that with other people, like when
Upon request, we do.
Okay.
Countless times when we've gone through inspections with Corps of Engineers, State of California, they request all of that. FEMA, when we request reimbursements, they ask for all of the levy maintenance records, and it seems like a never-ending scanning process. And so it's shared upon request.
Okay.
Available.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Chairman, if you don't mind, I have a few more questions. I think it'll help provide the future of this work. I guess this would be for Sammy or the professor. Do we know of other levies in the state that are doing similar type analysis?
Not that I'm aware of, and in any of the forums I'm in, I haven't heard about this. That doesn't say it's for certain, but no, I believe this is kind of, I think many areas are just trying to build up their levies and strengthen their levies, and we're at the point where we're great.
Thanks. Let's talk about, funding is going to be a question these days. Water agency. Can you just give a summary of, how this was funded, how much total and?
Absolutely. So in February 20th, 2024, Yuba-Water approved a grant for $360,000 for 2 years. I believe we started putting in the sensors. It took the summer, and I think we started to put in the sensors about November, December of 2024. So really, it's only gone through about two full water year. I mean, not even full water year. Wet year cycles. I think in our conversations, Professor, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did meet earlier this year, a couple months ago, in preparation for this presentation, and talked about maybe continuing, having the students continue monitoring those sensors, doing some site visits this year, and then once the agency is in better understanding of the financial position, talk about future funding after that is what our conversations have been.
Excellent, Sammy. That's a perfect response. So like many of the efforts we undertake here at the agency, we often get a new idea and then we go into, okay, let's do a proof of concept. And I think what you saw here today is we've proved the concept, and we proved the concept is valuable. And like board members here, I was pleasantly surprised at how much information is gained through this. I hear of a thing like a digital twin and don't know how useful it is, but it sounds like, talking to Patrick, that this will be useful. He still has to field verify things that are going on. And that's not just, I imagine it's not just walking and doing the normal inspections, but in the future, if we ever have to do additional borings, whether it's on the 784 levies or on other levies in the county, we can use both technologies, the actual borings and then this, remote sensing type work. So with that and with the, the current budget constraints we have, I believe this board would want to continue on our primary mission areas, flood control and water supply. And I see this as an investment in the flood control side. So what I will do is work with Sammy and the professor and come up with potential next steps. Like Sammy just mentioned, maybe it's limited the next several months, but once we understand how long we will be out and what the financial impact is, we can continue this relationship and then pick it back up in a more significant effort in the future. So that hope that answers the plan for the future work. In addition to that, I'm looking out into the crowd and I'm seeing North Yuba Water District folks sitting out there. You know, they have canals, and they have canals that have leaks. Basically, the canals in the foothills, the berm side or the downslope side of a canal is basically a levee. It's designed to contain water in the canal. I'm seeing this work expanding into analyzing canal systems as well. It's very similar type of work, you know, surface conditions, subsurface conditions, inspections for different types of leak failure modes. I'm seeing this effort being able to expand into that too. So that's what's going through our minds as staff. We think this is a great effort, great relationship with the folks at Berkeley, and I want to thank them for all their hard work and the presentation and the details.
Billy, I just wanted to expand a little bit on Director House's question as far as levee maintenance. Every month in our board packets, we include our field manager's report, and that has the complete summary of the monthly maintenance that was completed. That's everything from rodent control, herbicides, vegetation abatement, everything, and that's included in our meeting minutes every month. So it's very detailed, and I encourage anybody to log on our website and look at the minutes and be able to find that monthly field management report. So I hope that better answers your question.
Yep, I definitely appreciate it. The reason I was asking is I know some of the other levee districts, like the farmer maintained levee districts, they're under manpower and underfunded. So if there's something that they can garner from one of these established levee districts, it'd be great to be able to pass some free knowledge off so they know where to look. Yeah,
a wide selection of documentation to choose from, but that's really the best summary. It's the same summary that we upload into the DWR LMA reporting that's due every September 30th. So it's also documented on our website.
all right. Thank you.
Willie?
Yeah, Director House, I think one additional thing we can use this team for is, you know, we did this proof of concept on improved levees, certified levees, to see how they're you know, handling annual flows. I think we can also do it. They mentioned condition assessment. Well, there's no reason why we can't do this on the condition of levees that aren't yet certified. I'm thinking District 10, you know, why not go out and expand this effort into District 10 and ensure that future investments in District 10 are at the prioritized places, and this could be used to help ground truth the prioritized places. So again, additional expansion of this effort into different areas.
Sammy, you have something else? Okay.
Yeah, just to add on to that, when we first looked at this, we looked at all of the levees, and just for this initial pilot effort, it was just chosen to look at RD 784 and the Dry Creek and Bear Creek areas, just for location purposes to try to contain everything. But there was always a discussion of how do you expand it and to look at RD 10 specifically and some of the challenges that system has explicitly, and I think there would be different sensors and different things that we would look at, but for this initial 2-year look, we were just focused on those parts. So,
Sammy.
So your timing of this presentation was well planned, I think, in that just in the last days, we've had these huge storms in Indiana and Hawaii. And you know, of course, their hydrology, their topography, their, you know, everything's different. But it's still just a reminder to me always when you see those events, other places. It's just a reminder of us to keep our focus on flood control and what we can do in our situation. And you know, there's always going to be that. It's not a matter of if; it's just when is the next big storm that we see. So. My thoughts are on this is that don't assume because of our budget constraints that there won't be funding for you to continue this work, that, you know, think about what's next and what the funding needs to be and give us a chance to consider that. And especially as we learn more about our own constraints. So just keep up the great work. All right. Any questions from the public on that or comments on that subject? All right. Then I think we are ready to move on to the manager's report.
Thank you. Okay, so New Bullards Bar is at 1,911 feet with a storage of about 765,000 acre feet. We continue to deliver about 1,250 cubic feet per second through the low-level outlet, meeting our accord minimum in-stream flows and our irrigation demand. The maintenance crews up at Colgate have, well, last board meeting, you got an update from Aaron Esselman and Navjot about the condition of the Colgate plant. And since then, we have removed the exciters for a deep clean and surface rust removal. So that work is ongoing. The maintenance crew also replaced some small PRVs in the hydraulic system related to the low-level outlet at New Bullards Bar to ensure that that system is reliable and delivering water downstream. The maintenance crew continues to clean debris and do general cleaning at Colgate Powerhouse, and Nordic continues to remove sediment from the river. That work is going really well. It should be concluded potentially by the end of this week. I visit our power systems facilities in Oregon House at least once a week, and we have a live camera on that work. So I get to go in there and see the work at least weekly, often more often than that. And it is amazing what has been accomplished in the river as far as removing the sediment and debris and man-made materials that have been removed there. And the lack of turbidity, we had a significant concern of turbidity downstream, and the methodology Nordic has used to approach that sediment removal has definitely minimized that turbidity. So surprisingly good results there. Today we will open bids for the hill slope and erosion temporary stabilization. There's a field tour on August 4th, and we'll open bids today. And that work is more of a medium-term effort to stabilize the hillside that was impacted by the penstock incident in preparation for winter storms. Related to that, we have our Board of Consultants meeting number 3. It's actually ongoing as we speak. It started at 8 this morning. It'll be today and tomorrow. And the erosion control and sediment engineering package will be discussed at that meeting and hopefully approved by the Board of Consultants and FERC as a result of that meeting. In addition to that, we will be discussing the design criteria for the penstock rebuild. There's our consulting engineering firm put together a design criteria package. The Board of Consultants has had that for a few weeks. They'll be reviewing that. In addition, they'll give us their comments on our conceptual design we presented to them at the last Board of Consultants meeting number 2. So the background for repair is ongoing. Of course, I mentioned that several months ago that we would be designing the repair in parallel with the forensics investigation. The forensic investigation, as I understand it, is ongoing. It is on track to be completed per schedule. Once that is done, we will be able to marry up the conceptual design with the identified root cause or causes and ensure that what we construct going forward is as good or better than what we had and will last us for several decades. So again, that work is ongoing as planned and it's going well. As far as operations go, we do have Narrows 1 and 2 both online, and we're delivering a little over 1,300 CFS downstream of Inglebright through those units. As far as the climate and weather, the next 10 days looks to be about average seasonal conditions. We are looking at, as I've reported in the past, going into an El Nino season this winter, and I've said in the past we've looked at historic records of El Nino, and it's a coin toss whether it's going to be wet or dry, but as always, we prepare for wet years and prepare for flood season in coordination with DWR and the Army Corps and others. You'll see some anniversaries for staff listed in your hard copy there. Several folks had work anniversaries this past month. I do want to note that we had one elect tech choose to leave the agency, and I want you to know that that's not incident related. It was a personal decision for that employee to leave the agency. That's reported in your hard copy report. And in communications and community relations, KCRA 3 was actually at our office this morning when I pulled in. KCRA 3, in addition to the appeal, UBANet and Aqua News featured stories about our K through 12 curriculum being ready for release to the schools. The appeal also gave us a nice write-up about about it in their rough notes and casual thoughts column. The penstock incident impacts were mentioned to introduce a CBS 13 story promoting the fundraising efforts for the salmon expeditions. Dee Dee and I were on 93Q podcast talking about the good things we are still doing in spite of the penstock incident. KCRA3 picked up the video we released featuring Sean Spanny, our environmental scientist, and turned it into a great story about our water quality testing during the sediment removal project. That's the work that I mentioned Nordic was doing. Ryan McNally did an interview with the Sacramento Bee about impacts to water supply and agriculture as a result of the penstock incident, but it doesn't appear it'll turn into a story since there really aren't any significant impacts. And yesterday we issued a press release about the renewal of the North Yuba Forest Partnership effort, and we expect to see some coverage about that in the coming days. On the community relations side of things, Ryan McNally gave a general agency presentation to the California State Association of Counties, or CSAC, on August 7th. And our upcoming meetings, September 1st, we'll have a regular board meeting, a Yuba Water Construction Authority meeting, and an ABP committee meeting, all that same day.
Thank you. We're move on to director's reports. Andy, nothing. Rennick.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for putting a presentation together and getting Ryan out to meet with the leadership from CSAC. So last week we had the president of the California State Association of Counties and their general manager, CEO, out to get to know Yuba County a little bit better so they can help us represent ourselves well at lobbying efforts throughout the state. So they're used to hearing the Central Valley's wants and needs and the population dense wants and needs, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil and we're not so squeaky right now. So it's nice to have them out, get to see our community. They didn't have a ton of time. Originally, they were supposed to go up and see our Bullard's Bar, the reservoir, and our new power systems headquarters, but they had less time than they expected. So, but it was great for Ryan to pivot and give a good presentation on not only the incident, but how water's affected Yuba and Sutter counties for the last 100 years. So, thank you guys.
Seth, nothing. John.
Brownsville Mountain Fair this weekend, so hope you can all make it up. I'll be in the rib cook-off on Saturday. That's it.
All right, Gary.
Nothing this week.
All right, Charlie.
Nothing to report.
Okay, the only thing I have is I've been following the public reaction on the release of the curriculum, and it just seems like there's a lot of positive reaction out there, and it excites me to see it get implemented and see what happens in the coming years and in the education world. So with that, I think we're ready to adjourn the meeting.